Hello, book people. P.T. Hilton here. I want to talk to you today about one of my favorite tropes in fiction, and that is the small town with a secret. I love the small town with a secret because it's so versatile. Usually it's some kind of mystery thriller kind of situation, but it can easily be a fantasy, a sci-fi, horror. It lends itself to so many different genres. It's awesome. Basically, Small Town with a Secret is any kind of story where someone goes to a small town. Often they're returning to a small town. Maybe it's the place they grew up and they've been away for a while, and they go there and everything just seems a little bit off, and you're not sure why. You're not sure what exactly the deal is, but you can just feel it in your bones that something strange is happening here. And as they investigate further, they find out what that something strange is. That's the kind of classic setup for this. I'm going to tell you 5 of my favorite Small Town with a Secret books. The first one I want to talk about is The Mid Which Cuckoos by John Wyndham. This has been adapted a number of times, twice I think, as a movie, and the movie version was called Children of the Damned. So you may have heard of that. This is a really fun book in which basically this like weird UFO type object appears hovering over this town, and everyone like goes in this deep sleep for, I think it's like 24 hours or something. When they wake up, that UFO type thing is gone, and they don't really know what happened, but shortly after they discover every woman in the town is pregnant. The majority of this story happens, I think, 10 or so years later. I'm a little off on the details, perhaps, when those children have been born and are being raised, and there's something just a little bit off about them. It's a great story. It's when I read it, it does feel like the writing is a little bit dated, not in a bad way though, in an interesting way. Like the writing is so like thoughtful, and the characters kind of go off on these like kind of philosophical bents, and that's part of the charm of the book to me. They'll be debating this kind of life or death situation, and one of the characters will just start kind of like waxing poetic about the nature of modern life, and there's something just kind of quaint and fun and beautiful about it. I thought that might have been the time or been John Wyndham's writing style. I have heard though that his other novels are not like that. One of his other great novels is Day of the Trifeds. I have not got to that yet, but I hope to get to that in the near future. One cool thing, I keep a little quote journal, and I wanted to share this one quote from The Mid Which Cuckoos because I think it kind of encapsulates a lot of one of the really cool aspects of small towns with a secret. This is right after someone has suggested, should we go to the police about this situation? One of the characters said, "The law punishes the criminal after he's been successful. It is no use to us. We intend to stay alive." So that's, I think, a great quote that really shows one of the cool things about small town with the secrets. In these situations, like something weird is happening, and you maybe have a little bit of evidence, but they don't have enough evidence that they could go to the police. They couldn't convince the police of what's going on, so they have to kind of deal with things themselves. And that's one really fun aspect of small towns with secrets. The next one I want to talk about is The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. Ira Levin is maybe my favorite writer. He only wrote a handful of novels, but every one of them is really pretty cool. Some of his other ones are Rosemary's Baby, The Boys from Brazil, A Kiss Before Dying, This Perfect Day. Those are some of his other ones. But this is one of my favorites. So this is the story of a family that moves to a small town, and gosh, you can't say too much about this without giving it away. You may already know from the numerous movies, and Stepford Wives has kind of become just a saying a little bit that'll be used in popular culture and a lot of other movies and TV shows these days. But this book is awesome because not only does it have that great mysterious element, but it really is a social commentary too, and I think it says some interesting things that are just told just as true today as it did back then. And Ira Levin, what I love about him so much as a writer is his plots are like so tight and clockwork. They just fit together so well. There's like a beautiful machine. They're things of beauty. So I highly recommend reading some Ira Levin if you've never read any. Boys from Brazil or A Kiss Before Dying are great places to start, but this one would be another good one to start with. Next up, we've got Pines by Blake Crouch. This is currently running as a TV show, Wayward Pines on Fox. Haven't seen the TV show yet, but I really like Blake Crouch a lot. A lot of his books are great. I can highly recommend his book Run also, which is one of my favorite kind of like post-apocalyptic, I guess really apocalyptic novels that I've read in a long, long time. And he's like a self-publishing success story, which is great for me as a self-published author. He's very inspiring. This book was not self-published. It was published by one of Amazon's print houses, but some of his previous books that were self-published I love a lot, including Run. Anyway, this book, Pines, it's kind of funny because it's like constantly at the top of the Amazon charts, but because it's published by an Amazon imprint, I think 47, Thomas and Mercer in this case, Thomas and Mercer, you don't see it like in any other bookstores or anything because bookstores are like, screw Amazon, we're not carrying that. So it's funny because it's like so popular on Amazon. If you shop on Amazon, you see this like all the time. But if you don't shop on Amazon, you probably never see this. But anyway, this is the story of a Secret Service agent whose partner goes missing in the small town called Wayward Pines. I think it's Utah, and he goes to investigate what happened to her. Anyway, this is a really good book. I love Blake Crouch. He knows just like how to give you just enough mystery and just enough answers and keep you right there on the edge throughout the whole book. So this is a trilogy, fun trilogy. I recommend picking it up. Next up, I have Harbor by John Evid Lindquist. He is probably best known as the author of Let the Right One In, also adapted for American film as Let Me In. Really good writer. I like all this stuff a lot too. This is the story of basically a young couple's daughter goes missing on this island. Just they're out for a walk and she just disappears. And the majority of the story happens a number of years later, 5 or 10 years later, when after his marriage is falling apart and he's kind of become an alcoholic, he moves back to this island to kind of try to figure out what happened to his daughter. And this is a small town with a secret in the truest sense, in that, he starts quickly getting the clue that other people are in on what happened. People have information that they're reluctant to tell him or just flat out won't tell him. People are trying to, they do not want him to investigate what he's investigating. And it's a supernatural story, and it has just one of the most interesting like resolutions when you find out what's going on behind it. It is not something I saw coming, and is a little bit different than anything I think that I've ever read. So I recommend checking that out. The final book is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. Stephen King is kind of a master of small town with the secret stories. A lot of his short stories are small town with the secret stories. If you think of like the classic, people are driving across the country and their car breaks down in some small town and there's weirdness going on. He's got a lot of short stories that have that kind of a setup. A lot of old like Twilight Zones and Outer Limits have that too, come to think of it. But this is one of my favorites of early King. This is probably my favorite of the like really early Stephen King work. And this is the story of a guy who moves to a small town that it turns out has a vampire. What I love about this is I think it takes the vampire mythos very seriously and very differently than we see it depicted usually today in culture. I know this book is probably close to 40 years old now, but the way he takes down is much more of a Dracula kind of bent. It's definitely highly inspired by Dracula. I think there's a lot of flashes of what Stephen King would become in this book. This was the second book. I mean, Carrie is good too, but for me, the Stephen King that I really love, I think, is kind of first rears his head novel-wise in this book. So those are my small town with secrets. I love small towns with secrets. I would love to hear what some of your favorite small towns with secrets are. So in the space below, tell me what are some of your favorite novels that have small towns with secrets. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you next time. Bye.